Hi, this is Doug Schneider. Welcome back to Real Hi-Fi. Today I want to rehash a topic from the summer of 2022. MoFi Gate, the Mobile Fidelity debacle, whatever you want to call it. I want to talk about the digital step we all learned that the company put into their record pressing process, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe longer, and talk about what the company did wrong, the one main thing, and what they did right. It might surprise you. So in case you don't really know what went on, Mobile Fidelity is a specialist reissue label primarily targeting old recordings for audiophiles. Their claim to fame is they take original master recordings and make new records from them. They've implied, let's put that as the best case scenario to consumers, that those recordings came from the original master tapes. Now that's suspect at best, and that's a topic for another video. But the implication was they came from the original master tapes, analog usually, and that's what was used to cut their new recordings, when in fact it was found out and they disclosed that they were actually taking the analog recordings and putting them to a digital intermediary step before making their records. And for those who wonder why this was so controversial, well, it's because all the analog gurus out there want to believe that when they're listening to an LP on a turntable, when the stylus is picking up its information from the groove, they're hearing a luxurious, smooth, all analog signal path from the microphone through to their speakers, and that's usually not even close to true. And what the company did wrong, of course, is mislead their customers for years. And that's why it was a scandal. And even when they came forth with it, they didn't really apologize, kind of a half-assed apology. So what the company did wrong in this whole thing is, like I said, mislead the consumers, do it for years, and not really fess up properly with a really good explanation of not just why they used that digital step, but why they chose to mislead everyone for that many years. It was blatantly the wrong thing to do. But here's the irony with all that. That digital step was likely the right thing to do. And why do I say that? Because if you've ever heard an analog tape to analog tape transfer, there is an easily audible degradation. We all know that from the past. It's not like I kind of heard a difference. It's like, wow, I lost a lot of fidelity in that transfer. Whereas in an analog to digital transfer done correctly, it appears to be utterly transparent. And why do we know that? Well, because it was only when forced to divulge that they were using a digital step that it came forward. Contrary to what the analog gurus are trying to backtrack on and say, oh, I heard digital all those years. They didn't. Not all those years. And we're talking at least a decade and nobody picked it up. The transfer from analog to digital was, for all intents and purposes, perfectly transparent, undetectable, the right thing to do. And I'm not the only one who thinks this way. Every industry professional I talk to, and I'm talking recording engineers and producers and the like, weren't surprised that the digital step was there. In fact, most were really pleased that Mobile Fidelity was finally found out. But they weren't critical of the process. In fact, they said it was the right thing to do. And why was it the right thing to do? Because, like I said, if they had to do an analog tape to analog tape transfer, that would have degraded the sound, and you would have noticed that. And also, analog tape degrades over time. And most, if not all, record companies have already transferred their analog master tapes to digital. In fact, none of this is new. I recently read a book called Get Tusk by Ken Calais and Hernan Rojas, two of the engineers who worked on Fleetwood Mac's 1979 release, Tusk. which was recorded in 1978 and 1979. Now, in there, something surprised me, but it's not really a secret. They mixed this to digital. And I say it's not a secret because on the back cover it says, digital mixdown equipment furnished by Soundstream Inc., assistance by Rich Feldman. So this album has a digital step from more than 40 years ago. And why would they do that? Well, it certainly wasn't to cut cost. Digital was really, really, really expensive and difficult to work with back then. Instead, it was to preserve sound quality. In Calais' previous book, Making Rumors, about the making of Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, he describes the problems they had with analog tape. They had played the tape so much that they were losing the high frequencies at one point, and they had to go back to backup tapes to get the fidelity back. So when it came to making this album, I believe it was all recorded analog, but when they mixed it down, they mixed it to a digital master so they wouldn't get the degradation of going analog to analog, and they could also get it in a digital format so it wouldn't degrade. Now, at that time, there were no CDs. It was released on LP, so it was brought back to the analog world. CDs wouldn't come for a few more years. But it was put into a digital intermediary step to try to retain as much quality as possible. And this is a misconception among those analog gurus who think that digital is the devil's work. It's not. Done right, it's transparent and it can last forever. But before someone jumps down my throat and says, hey, Tusk many times sounds lousy compared to Rumors, which was all analog. Well, if you read Calais' book, Making Rumors, you'll know that he had a huge impact on the sound of that album. And he wanted a hi-fi sound. He wanted a big, luxurious, smooth sound, the California sound of the time, and he got it. But when it came to Tusk, Lindsey Buckingham dominated and wanted a grungy, lo-fi, distorted sound for many of the songs and got that. So what you're hearing is not the impact of the digital step in terms of degrading the sound. In fact, it probably preserved the sound better than if they cut to analog. Rather, you're hearing the choices made in the studio at the recording time. So let's wrap this up by stating the obvious. Mobile Fidelity was incredibly stupid for misleading its consumers for so long, but also kind of smart for going to a digital step to preserve the quality for their record production process, but they didn't invent anything new. 1979 right here, but this wasn't the first time. The New York Times wrote that same year how digital was already widespread in the music industry. It was being used throughout the 70s. This was just a high-profile example of a digital step back then. I hope this content helped. I hope you find it useful. If you like it, subscribe, and thank you for watching.